Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the MMA Cycles Weekly Market Update. This is Gianni DePoce, and it's great, as always, to be with you all. This week, we are joined by a very special guest we are very excited to have do an interview with us, and it's Robert Weinstein, otherwise known as Crypto Damus. Robert, how are you?
I'm doing great, Gianni. Thanks so much for having me here today.
Good. We're so glad that you can join us. And before we get started, I'm looking at some of the events that happened in the market this past week. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I've been doing this crypto astrology project since about 2017. I think I'm one of the more prominent financial astrologers that's focused really specifically on cryptocurrencies. Of course, there's a couple others, but I think I have the longest running subscription financial astrology report that's really specifically just for crypto. And like I said, that's been running since late 2017.
That's wonderful. And so that's exactly what we're going to be talking about with you today. We're going to be talking about Bitcoin as well as a couple other altcoins that you mentioned to me before. But before we do, let me go ahead and review some markets and what happened this past week. So let me share my screen here. Starting off with the Dow Jones, we are seeing a really nice, strong rally into the weekend. We just started Cancer season, and we mentioned last week in our video that W.D. Gann was very adamant about potential turning points during the seasonal changes. So we started Cancer season, and the markets bottled rocket up higher, especially in stocks. We also had a trine between Venus and Pluto on the 21st. And then we also saw Venus ingress into Gemini on the 22nd. But the big story really is in stocks. We're seeing the NASDAQ lead to the upside as well, which is a pretty constructive sign. So by no means are we out of the woods yet, but it is looking a little bit better than last week. We need to clear some important technical resistance. We also want to take a quick look at the 10-year Treasury yield. Pulled back a little bit this week, but seemingly finding its footing here by Friday. And this was something that was, we basically started off lower right around the time when Venus ingressed into Gemini, and we can't rule out the importance that the trine aspect between Venus and Pluto had as well. I also want to take a quick look at gold miners, specifically GDX's ETF, which is a really good proxy to see what's going on in the precious metal sector. Fell to new lows this week, but trying to solidify a bottom here. Still on the defensive very much so, but we'll definitely keep an eye on that as geopolitical tensions remain elevated, which, by the way, we have an aspect between Mars and Pluto next Friday on July 1st, a square aspect. And so we could see an inflammation of geopolitical tensions around that time. We've seen some reports emerge, with the Russia conflict, specifically surrounding Kaliningrad, which is that space between Poland and Lithuania. So definitely keep an eye on that right around that Mars-Pluto square. And this is an excellent segue into crude oil. And then I also want to look at copper, and then we'll get to our discussion with Robert, which I know very many of you are excited to see. But crude oil pulled back this week, but trying to hammer out a higher low here. So if we're going to see some geopolitical inflammations next week, keep in mind that we have that Neptune retrograde on June 28th. And I think a big part of this Neptune retrograde could be that perhaps things are not as bad as they seem as it pertains to the economy. We know that Neptune rules delusions, confusion, uncertainties, hysteria. It could be that the fears escalate, or it could be that some of those fears are unfounded. We won't know until we get past that retrograde. And last but not least, crude oil has a pretty big impact on inflation, but copper, otherwise known as Dr. Copper, seems to be seeing recession. So we have some conflicting signals between crude oil and copper markets this past week as copper collapsed. So we'll definitely keep an eye on that, and definitely keep our readers updated via our copper reports. So let me go ahead and stop sharing my screen here. Robert, I have a couple questions for you. So you are Crypto Damus. So what are your thoughts on Bitcoin right now, or any other cryptocurrencies?
Yeah, well, the crypto space has been hit hard this year, as we all know, along with stocks. And, this all really goes back to the Fed, the shifting from the quantitative easing policies over the last decade, and now they're shifting into this quantitative tightening policies. And this has really hurt crypto as a more risk-on speculative asset. And obviously crypto is down, Bitcoin's down about 60–70% on the year from the all-time highs last year. And I'm pretty bearish. I'm not optimistic for crypto moving forward here this summer, because we've got some important astrological signals and technical signals. We're in a downtrend. We're still making lower lows and lower highs. Until that changes, I remain bearish, especially with the signatures, the astrological signatures that I'm looking at. Do you want me to go into the astrological signals that we're seeing?
Yeah, please tell me about that Pluto transit that we discussed before.
Yeah, so as you, I'm sure you know, Gianni, and your listeners may know, where this is a year of the USA Pluto return. The first pass was in late February, and we're coming up on the second pass here, which I think is around July 10th, 11th. And to me, actually, I was kind of wait and see on this one. I wasn't sure. Obviously, there's never been one before. We didn't know exactly how it was going to play out. It was going to be more political, more financial. And I think that the data is kind of coming in pretty strong that we're heading into really an economic crisis in the United States with record high 40-year high inflation. The last CPI print came in again very high, and the Fed has had to take an aggressive stance raising rates. I think that based on the fact that we've got USA Pluto return in July and another one in December, that we are quite possibly heading into a recession and an economic crisis. So I think this is going to be continued rough year for crypto and also probably for stocks. So as we said, the Pluto return, the next USA Pluto return is going to be around July 10th, 11th at 27 degrees Capricorn. Okay, USA Pluto in the Sibley chart, or really no matter what chart you're using, USA Pluto's around 2730 Capricorn. And Pluto is going to retrograde back to that point around that middle of July. Well, it just so happens that when we're looking at the Bitcoin progress chart, okay, some of your advanced astrologer listeners may know what I'm referring to, the progress chart. The Bitcoin progress sun is incidentally also at 27 degrees Capricorn,
wow,
right?
That's fascinating.
So initially we thought, well, is this a coincidence? Is this a meaningful thing? And now it turns out, in July, Pluto retrograde is going to basically hit both of those points, within a week or two of each other. And I think we're already seeing that play out, Gianni, which is that this economic crisis in the United States, with inflation and the Fed, it really has ramifications for crypto. And we don't see that really getting better with Pluto conjunct the Bitcoin progress sun. And I think that's going to be exact. This is the second USA Pluto return, but it's the fourth conjunction of Pluto to the Bitcoin progress sun. The first three, okay, all had a 15 to 25% dump within a 10-day time window of that aspect hitting exact. Now, it hit a little early on one, it hit a little late on the other, it hit right in the middle on one of them. We don't know exactly, when it's going to happen. In the last one was in January, and right around January 24th, okay, that was actually the bottom of the initial part of the sell-off. So the next one is coming up, I would say, between July 16th and 24th. Okay, so we're looking for a big sell-off in that date range on crypto. When Bitcoin has a big sell-off, it's going to hit the entire crypto market.
Yeah, Bitcoin does seem to be like Bitcoin does seem to be like the Dow of the crypto sector.
It's the dominant. It has 40. I think right now 45% of the crypto market share, right? So it's, as goes Bitcoin, so goes the rest of the market. So that's why it's really so important to track Bitcoin. And in fact, altcoins really are going to get crushed, I think, in this high inflation, high interest rate environment. Now, should Bitcoin get through the Pluto transit to its progressed sun in July, immediately following, it has a natal chart transit of Saturn on top of its inception, Neptune, August 1st through the 10th. That one already previously hit April 1st through the 10th, where we saw a massive sell-off there. So Bitcoin really has a 1-2 punch this summer. Should it make it through one, it's unlikely it's going to get through both of those geocosmic signatures without a continued major sell-off. And on my weekly chart, I don't know about your guys, but on my weekly chart, I'm really looking down. I have, so 19.5 is still a really important support that's holding. That's the old all-time high from 2017. So that was just tested last weekend as a support. And although we got a wick down, on the weekly chart actually closed above it. So 19.5 is still holding. If Bitcoin manages to hold above 19.5, the situation is a little better. Yeah. But it has to get back above the 200-week moving average, and that's at 22.4 right now. So that's a critical resistance level. I think that we've seen a lot of new moon tops. The next new moon coming up here is that same Neptune station date. Yeah. So I'm looking for maybe a test of that 22.4 and the 200-week MA as a resistance level. And if it can get above that, now the situation would be a lot more positive, and then we would maybe reinterpret some of these aspect signatures. It would have to get above 22.4 and then retest it as a support and hold. So I see the likelihood of that as pretty low. Now, below 19.5, the next support that I have, if you go back to 2018, is around 16.5. And then below that, it gets really ugly. It goes all the way down to those previous resistance levels around 11, 12, 13,000. Yeah. And I think that those are possible to get hit on this unfavorable lineup of Pluto and Saturn. Right, the two really bad boys of astrology are going to tango in the Bitcoin progressive natal charts, and we found that those have been pretty reliably accurate. Now, we don't know exactly how it's going to play out, but I would say the next important date for financial markets, Gianni, as you know, is July 13th. We've got another CPI number. That's a full moon in Capricorn. That's conjunct Pluto.
Nice.
And that's going to activate potentially the USA Pluto return. However, it isn't a trine to Uranus, so there could be a silver lining there. It's not all doom and gloom, but we have to see. That's right around the exact USA Pluto return is that next CPI print.
Yeah, Robert, as you're telling me about these aspects with Pluto and Saturn and Neptune, it's making me think of some mundane reports that have come out in the last couple of weeks, specifically surrounding Three Arrow Capital and a lot of liquidity issues you're seeing with exchanges like Coinbase and BlockFi or BlockFi, however you want to call it. And I think that could be a big story, because Pluto is bankruptcy, insolvency, and Saturn is accountability. Neptune is deception. So it seems that perhaps there was some fraud that's coming to light in this space, and based off the aspects you're telling me about, potentially, in the peak summer months when the sun's at its most bright, there will be light shined on that deception.
Well, Pluto is breakdown, destruction, and death, right? Yeah. And loss, but it's part of a regeneration and renewal. So it's clearing out the scams, the frauds, the Ponzi's, and this is a good point that you raised, because there is a liquidity. The larger macroeconomic situation has exposed liquidity problems in crypto. Now, this gentleman, Sam Bankman-Fried of FTX, has been stepping in to try to avert the liquidity crisis. He's been bailing out flailing crypto firms. But how long can this one guy continue to hold up the entire crypto market? That's what I'm concerned about. He's giving $100 million lines of credits to some of these, shaky crypto companies. And, I'm a crypto believer, right? You can follow me on Twitter, Crypto Damus. I'm a crypto guy, but look, the reality is the market got overconfident. And now, Pluto's going to come in and it's going to rearrange. The weak projects are going to collapse. And there could be, we narrowly averted a major liquidity crisis this weekend. But how long can that hold up? So there's still a lot of liquidity issues in the crypto space. You're absolutely right. And we're going to see they're going to get tested, this summer, I think, under these aspects. And the one other geocosmic that we had talked about earlier was the Mars-Uranus node conjunction right around July 31st. Another high stress, challenging aspect. It's going to also square Saturn, so it's going to activate that Uranus-Saturn square, which is still in effect.
Right.
And that's going to be another area that we're looking at. It's a very violent, explosive, very dramatic aspect of Mars and Uranus. I mean, Mars-Uranus, but on the node's going to strengthen it, intensify it. Absolutely. So we could see some dramatic breakdowns in markets. That comes right after the July Fed meeting, by the way, which is July 27th. So there could be some explosive consequences after the next Fed meeting. And I think that now it also could, maybe it's not a market thing. Maybe we see, God forbid, another mass shooting, or like you said, an aggravation of some geopolitical tensions. But that is a very high stress, challenging aspect. And that's another one that we have on our radar at the end of July.
Well, I'm putting my economic history hat on, and this will be the last point. Then we can look at Dogecoin real quick. But, I think back to when the United States was created, you had, basically the Pluto Return now, but there was a massive monetary restructuring that happened around that time. The phrase "not worth a continental" comes from that, because you had the continental currency basically devalued. The U.S. went through a period of hyperinflation after the Revolutionary War, but there was a massive debt restructuring, and it became the U.S. became one of the most respected capital markets in the world. So you're already seeing rumblings of central banks in Europe, and the Fed too, incorporating blockchain technology into the sovereign currency. So I think once this all shakes out, I think it's a big part of the Pluto transit as well. So excellent points, Robert. Do you want to look at Dogecoin real quick before we wrap it up here?
Yeah, can I just make one more point about that, actually, real quick? Well, I just want to also say, like, kind of in a bigger picture of things, it's very interesting to me that this whole quantitative easing program experiment of the Fed started basically in 2008 when Pluto entered Capricorn. Oh, yeah. So I think it's very interesting that now is kind of coming to its end game as Pluto is getting ready to move into Aquarius next year.
That's a salient point.
And so nobody really knows what is going to happen with quantitative tightening. Now, look, the Fed has a $9 trillion asset balance sheet. Yeah. Nobody's ever done that before, and so nobody really knows how that plays out. So it's going to be fascinating to watch. But the Fed is they're running out of moves. I don't want to say they're in checkmate, but they're in check right now. Yeah. They can either let inflation run out of control, or they can crash the economy by raising rates. Yeah. So it's pretty dicey where this is going, and I think that we have a rough 2022.
Yeah. Yeah, very good. Okay, on to Dogecoin. What's on your radar here, Robert?
Yeah, so the one altcoin, we scanned a lot of altcoin. We use altcoin natal inception charts, and we look for anything interesting that pops out. We're not bullish on altcoins this year in general, so we're kind of staying away from them. But the one that really did pop out to us is that Jupiter stationing at 8 degrees Aries is going to station on top of the Dogecoin natal Uranus right around that middle July. And so Dogecoin might be an outlier and maybe has some kind of a rebound rally. We don't know, maybe Elon Musk tweets something, maybe, we don't know exactly how it plays out, but that's our one kind of altcoin play where we see potentially an entry developing in late June and early July. And there could be a rally for a week or two going into mid to late July. That's, if Bitcoin doesn't, we also have to look at that Pluto on the Bitcoin progress sun too, because if Bitcoin collapses, then that wouldn't be good for Doge. So we put this in the high risk. We're not going long here. We're actually looking for shorts. But there's the one long that we might try to play is a Dogecoin rally. Of course, we'd be using tight stop losses and really tight risk management on that, just because the overall trend is down. Right. But you do see Dogecoin is rallying with altcoins this week. So maybe that continues into July. We'll see. That's the one one astrological altcoin that really struck out to us in our research.
Very good. Wow, Robert, that was excellent. Thank you so much for taking some time to join us today. Where can viewers find you?
Yeah, so follow me on Twitter. I'm Astro Crypto Guru on Twitter is my handle. And I do I have a subscription reports on Patreon. So it's Crypto Damus 1 on Patreon. And you can go to my Twitter feed. I also have a website that has all my services and subscriptions, and that's astrocryptoreport.com. So go ahead and check that out.
Very good. Thanks again, Robert. And we definitely want to have you back on here. That concludes our weekly market update. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Just want to send out one more reminder that we did release our MMA monthly addendum report this past Monday on June 20th. So definitely encourage you to check that out. And so that's all we had for this week. www.mmacycles.com. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.